Welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about programs that enhance our community so that we can build bigger and better portfolios while providing options for our residents to achieve self-sufficiency. I'm your host, Tony McGinnis, Executive Director, CEO with the Huntsville Housing Authority. All right, welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about real issues that are impacting our community. And today I'm excited about the guest. This young man has been doing a lot of great things, was just recently named Huntsville Business Journal 40 under 40. And I'll let you expand on that pretty soon. He was also a recent, past recipient of the Young Professional of the Year by the Huntsville-Madison Chamber of Commerce. He's doing some phenomenal things in the community, and excited to get a chance to talk to him, but more so excited to have him as a team member here at the Huntsville Housing Authority. So without further ado, we'll introduce Quinton Young to the Life in the Bricks podcast. Quinton, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited about this.
So Quinton, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Who are you? Where are you from? What's some of your motivation?
So Quinton Young, I am originally from Oakland, California. I moved to Alabama to go to Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Got a history degree there, and then got to Huntsville through Alabama A&M. I went to graduate school there for a master's in urban and regional planning. And that's also how I got connected with the Housing Authority. Mr. Lundy had came and spoke to one of our classes, and at that point, I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. We were kind of, I guess, the Housing Authority was just finishing off the stuff with council courts and moving, low income housing down the South Parkway and stuff like that. And once he started talking about that and the pushback and stuff like that, I was sold. I've done a little work at DC after I left, and I interned at the Housing Authority. I went to Washington, DC, where I worked in policy for a year for NASCAF. So basically managing the Community Service Block Grant and the Weatherization Assistance Program. We had like a team of 6, and those was over $1 billion in grants, and we got to see where it all went. And then I did banking for 2 years in Washington, D.C. I banked at a low income area and a high income area. And then it just got too expensive. And I moved back here, single father. I've had my daughter since she was like 4. She's 15 now. And I've just been kind of moving around from banking, business incubators, fair housing. Done a little consulting around like small business, HBCUs, and entrepreneurship, commercialization. And then my work here at the Housing Authority has probably been the most significant, where we've been able to really make some significant impact around affordable housing and programs, unique programs at that.
Awesome, man. You got a rich history to be so young, man, and we're excited. Let's talk about this experience. You grew up in Oakland, California. I know that your family actually benefited from some of the programs that the Housing Authority in Oakland had to offer. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Oakland and how you all were able to take advantage and, being on some of the assistance in that area, how that helped shape who you are today, and how was it growing up in California?
I will say California was pretty wild. For me, so I was raised by my great aunt. My mom had me really young, and I probably didn't live with her. I've never lived with my mom, actually, but I was raised by my great aunt, my grandfather's sister, and I was raised by her until I was probably like 13, 14 years old. She had lupus real bad, so caretaker for a good amount of my life, to the point that, when I was younger, I used to have to sometimes ask to go to school. Missed out on getting skipped for grades and stuff like that, just based because I just wasn't going to school enough. My mom, the streets, my grandfather too. The streets, spent a good amount of his life in prison. And so we were doing Section 8. We did Section 8, me and I call her my mom, but that's my great aunt. And I mean, living on Section 8, I feel like you can't really tell the difference about how you live and everybody else. You don't know if anybody's on program or whatever. We moved around Oakland a little bit. I think probably by the time I got 4th, 5th grade, we were pretty stable in kind of one of the big dope spots in East Oakland, which was interesting to say the least. And then I moved with my dad when I was probably like 14 years old. I was going back and forth when I was starting out in 7th grade. I really wasn't connected to him because I really didn't have my mom around, my birth mom around. And walked past the house, and I remembered what the house looked like. Knocked on the door. I asked my brother. I didn't even remember he was my brother. Asked him, was my dad there? And then he said he wasn't. I came back and he was. And after that, my mom was kind of like called him and just told him that he needed to step up because she was sick all the time. And since then, I've probably been back and forth there. And then about high school, I went to stay there permanently. And he was prided on making us very, very, very independent. So we had to kind of buy our own like school clothes, and like we weren't guaranteed a meal every day. Great dude, great father, all that. But his dad was like that, made him independent. But for me, it helped because moving here, I really didn't have to worry about ways to get to money and stuff like that. So I was I had a little hustle in me. So I was able to come here across the country and kind of just make it happen. And I've been doing well ever since. I mean, I don't have any complaints at all.
You said something that was very interesting at the beginning of that. You said that, growing up in Section 8, you wasn't supposed to be able to tell the difference. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I really would hope that somebody listening to this episode would understand, that just because you have a voucher, that's just because you actually are living with assistance, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference. And I think that's key, because a lot of times people are stigmatized. I just received a call today. It was so funny that you said that, because somebody called the field office and said that, hey, there's somebody that's on Section 8 living above me that's paying rent. I'm like, well, how do you know that person's on Section 8? You don't know that. You should call the property manager. Let the property manager tell you what this person make up if they choose to tell you, because they're not obligated to tell you that. But oftentimes, people who have a voucher, they become stigmatized. But there are people, if you're going to be a good neighbor, you're going to be a good neighbor, whether you got a voucher or if you don't have a voucher. There are bad neighbors just like there are good neighbors. And, I'm glad you brought that point out, because oftentimes people who get vouchers, they get a bad rap because everybody thinks they're going to just be bad neighbors. No, they're not going to be bad neighbors. Bad neighbors are going to be bad neighbors. Just because you have a voucher doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a bad neighbor. So you talked about just kind of life growing up, living with your father, being independent. Is that kind of what got you into this kind of work?
I think what got me into this kind of work, Oakland has always had a lot of government issues, police issues, very social, political. We taught that really early. It's the birthplace of the Black Panthers. So pretty much everybody has some kind of, social, political awareness. And I think for me, I think probably like 5th grade, I kind of noticed that things weren't how they were supposed to be. I remember we had like a music program for a year, and then they kind of took the instruments, and I never saw another instrument until I went to college. And then, we just didn't have the programs. We didn't have anything. And I think going through middle school, it was just fun, we used to have parties and stuff like that. I mean, while school, things were happening. You start losing friends early because that's just the kind of city it was. But I feel like high school, and when they started like shutting down schools, and they shut down mine in particular, and it was just like something not right. And I used to, take the newspaper in the morning or whatever. I don't know if I was paying for it or not, but I wanted to get the information. And, it became just me just reading a little bit deeper into what was going on and just understanding that it wasn't normal. And I think from that point, with all the killings and all the things that were going on, I just didn't feel like it was normal. Everybody else normalized it. And I can't say that I knew it was different or wrong, but I just knew something was off. And the first 2 years of high school, I really wasn't going. I was focused on kind of just survival, if anything. And then I've always been smart. So some things happened in my neighborhood. It had got shot up real bad, and I was just there. And I think that caused me to make a decision to kind of like just finish high school. And so being the fact that I wasn't there the first 2 years for real, it required me to do a whole bunch of stuff, adult school, independent study, stuff like that. And I ended up just kind of lucking up. I ain't gonna call it luck, but people noticed that I was bright. And so one of the teachers had paid for me. He was a Teach for America teacher, paid for me to take the SAT. And I did all right on that. And my goal was just kind of to finish high school. My last semester of high school, I was probably I did 9 classes, adult school, independent study, all that stuff just to graduate. And probably 2 weeks before school started, Stillman called me and said I could come. My mom had borrowed money from her friend to put me on the plane, and just kind of left. And that was kind of it. And that's kind of how it ended up. I did freshman Senate and SGA and Pledge of Fraternity. I mean, it worked out. I had a good little support group. I made a lot of friends easily. So it all worked out.
Man, that's awesome. I can remember hearing about some of the programs that were shut down in California, especially music and some of those things. And through all of that, you still found a way to make it out. That just kind of speaks to your resilience and what you're able to do here in Huntsville. What are some of the changes that you've seen for the good of housing over the years, being a recipient of Section 8 and now working in the program? What are some of the things that you see that you wish you all could have taken advantage of as a young person growing up in Oakland and being on the Section 8 program? What do you think some of your family members could have taken advantage of only if they knew?
Homeownership, I feel like, is one, but I think really the kind of outside stuff that we do, the FSS programs and workforce and stuff like that. I mean, I knew people that stayed in public housing and Section 8. And I mean, none of those, I don't remember anybody taking advantage of any of that stuff. I didn't know that any of that stuff existed. And then the stuff that we've been able to do here to be able to create programs from, thin air, I think are probably some of the best things, like affordable auto loans and stuff like that. We've been able to do some things that just don't exist anywhere else, and probably wouldn't exist anywhere else if you don't have the kind of the resources and the networks to be able to kind of make them happen. So I feel like things like that, especially the affordable auto loan program, I feel like things like that could have changed a lot and gave some people some opportunities. And I think that us as a housing authority here have been able to kind of position ourselves in a different light to be able to kind of create job opportunities and spur, a lot of workforce development and kind of like at a way larger scale than we probably should be able to. So I think that kind of stuff too, because I think I was talking to my brother earlier and I was just talking about like at home, we don't really have those kind of manufacturing middle tier jobs that kind of give you the choice of if you want to be in the streets or not. And I feel like here in Huntsville, we have them, and then we've been able to find a way to kind of connect them to the housing authority and get sometimes some priority. So I feel like stuff like that is probably the biggest because it allows you to be truly self-sufficient, right? To be able to make your own money, build skills, things with Drake State where you could kind of go to school and get free education, even stuff that we've done with Calhoun around being able to learn how to do like skid steers and bulldozers and things like that. I could probably go on and on about the kind of stuff that we offer that I feel like should be probably everywhere.
Yeah, let's talk about the affordable auto program. I think, as we talk about some of these programs, those people who will get a chance to go back and listen to this, and they need to know exactly what is that program and what does it do for our residents.
So we were able to work with Redstone Credit, Federal Credit Union to create an affordable auto loan program because we working through people's credit and stuff like that. I found that it was a lot of barriers just centered around that, where people would pay these kind of absorbent fees around auto loans, right? Where people would be paying like $350 every 2 weeks for like a car that's like 10 years old. But they know that the people don't have money and they don't have credit and they need a car, right? So I think Redstone had some people come work out here from Chicago, and they came and they hired a consultant because they wanted to do some extra stuff. So me and the consultant had met and were just kind of like thinking through some things, working through some things, and we came to an idea of an affordable auto loan program, and then she went back there to pitch to them, and it worked. So we kind of worked through it for a minute, and what it ended up being was an auto loan program with no down payment. You could get into it as long as you haven't had a repossession within the last 2 years. You need a 620 credit score, but the cap is $15,000, and you go get the money from them, and then you go get your car. We've been at I think the highest interest rate, the average interest rate for that program is about 5%. And so, I mean, if you know anything about auto loan, I mean, that could cut payments in half, right? So I believe that the average payment that people have is probably like the low 200s. And at this point, they've done over $350,000 in loans.
Mm-hmm.
So we also added just not the housing authority people, but we also added DHR. So if you receive like food stamps, if you receive a TANF or anything, you are also able to participate in that program. And it's not something they promote or anything like that. It's typically referral, but it's been able to make some significant impact. And then we also added another layer into it because I was sitting down with a client, and she had like a 19% interest rate, right? Disabled children and stuff like that, and it just became a real burden for her. So I asked them to make it so you can refinance into it, and it took a couple months, but they did that for me as well. So we've done almost close to creeping into $400,000 in loans just off that program that we kind of created out of thin air.
Man, that's awesome because again, that's a game changer. That gives people an opportunity to have a little equity in the game, and it gives them an opportunity to really be able to, you know, apply for an auto loan that they probably typically wouldn't have been able to apply for. So, man, I appreciate your work in that. I do want to leave room to talk about a couple other programs, man. One being the home ownership program. I believe that in order for our residents to really get out of some of these generational cycles of poverty, home ownership is key. And just talk about the home ownership piece and what we've been able to do over the last few years. And a lot of people don't understand the leveraging power of their voucher at this present time. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but at this present time, the power of leveraging the voucher and the down payment assistance and all of those things. Just give us a brief overview of some of the things you've been able to do in helping residents who were public housing Section 8 become homeowners, and the testimonies that they have because now they're all the way locked in. Talk about some of those programs.
So for me, I didn't know about that we could use the voucher before I came here. I'm a former banker. It took me a minute. I feel like when I was in banking, I didn't fully grasp the mortgage process. I tried and just didn't already all the way have a handle on it. But when I came here, I really just dug in. But my experience in banking, especially when I left public policy and then went into banking, I went to banking for money, not because I thought it was a good career. A good career idea. I thought it was temporary. And I probably tried to leave the entire time, and ended up getting promoted. I was the best banker in DC for the first quarter I was there. I won awards there too, and but I was trying to leave the entire time. And so my connection to it and how I tried to make it beneficial is I tried to make a way to tie my urban planning degree, which had a concentration in housing and community development, with banking. Right. And so I found out about the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act. So here, what we do is leveraging that a lot, right? So it's building banking relationships, because with the Section 8 homeownership program, you got to recruit your own lenders. So within that, I was recruiting lenders that had that were good on the Community Reinvestment Act. And it also came into play because I wanted to create a benefit to the public housing residents too, right? Because they don't have the voucher to leverage. So what the Community Reinvestment Act allowed us to do was to get special loan products. So 100% financing. If people don't know what that means there's no down payment, because you could finance the whole amount, right? No private mortgage insurance. That's not something that you have to have. So that saves an extra $100, $200 a month, right? And then grants, right? So they were, not only were we able to use to leverage our banking relationships to get grants on other programs and projects that we were working on, we were able to get homeownership grants, right? So we were able to leverage I think probably like the last 5 people that have closed have received $12,000 grants towards their closing. Some people have received money at the closing table. They've given some up front, but, have ended up getting it back because with our people, they don't have a lot of money up front, right? So how can we help them, not have to have $13,000, at closing, which is that's astronomical. Some of them, they just not gonna touch that amount of money. It's just sometimes unfeasible.
Right.
So that's what we've been able to do there. And then also through grants, we've been able to, everybody that has closed for the most part has had at least their appraisal paid for by the housing authority. And that's whether they close or not. So that has put money back in the pockets of people that tried once and maybe the inspection didn't work, or something went sour at the end of the deal. And so we've been able to give them appraisal back. And it also gives them the confidence to go back into the game. Because the last person that we had close, I think that was in February, this was probably like her 3rd or 4th time trying, right? But she at least got the appraisal money back, which is around $700, right, back into her pocket. And she's tried and tried and tried. And so this last time she was able to close. She was able to get a $12,000 grant towards her closing. A Social Security recipient, elderly, that just wanted the dream of home ownership, and she was able to achieve that.
So over the last last 2 to 3 years, do you know how many people we've actually gone into home ownership?
We've probably done a good 8 or 9, maybe 10. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, because what's ended up happening because of the changes because I came around COVID, it was really weird. So when I first came, it was hard. People were getting outbid, right? Like you could get to the process, but just outbid, because it was so much money on the streets. The interest rates were low. People were giving, $20,000, $30,000 over asking. I've heard as much as $70,000 over asking just to get into a house.
Right.
And then it switched. It flipped, right? And then people weren't able to get approved for the amount of money that they needed to get into the market, right? The interest rates got high, the banks got scared. It was just hard to get money, right? So I could really get people approved and stuff like that. So now closer, really like last year, we kind of hit this fine little medium where people were willing to give, the sellers were willing to give towards the closing costs because the mortgage was still a little tight. The banks had got tired of holding out, so they were giving some money, right? And to a number that worked so they could go purchase in the market. And so we've kind of been playing this weird game with just the odd environment that we've been in through COVID and then the changing of administrations and inflation and all those things. But you know, I feel like we've been able to do a really good work. And been able to, when people didn't close, be able to kind of leverage our relationships as well to be able to do other things like, you know, youth employment programs. We just received a grant from Choice Bank to be able to continue our childcare program. So we've been able to make good on kind of all the relationships that we have.
Yeah, you talked about 10 possibly being that number. I was at a place here recently where one of the maybe top 5 housing authorities in the country, they've only done, you know, that amount, if less. And for us to be a housing authority that's not in the top 5 in the country to do 10 home ownerships is significant. And, you know, our goal is to do more because I truly feel like the more we can leverage and the more we can get people out of public housing, the better that's going to be. So we definitely appreciate that program and what it's doing. You know, I've been witness to some of the people's testimony of what it means to them to become a homeowner, what it means to them to be able to go in and sign on the dotted line saying that they're homeowners. That's game changing. And I stand behind that because I was also at this conference and I heard leaders talk about residents aren't ready or they don't want to be homeowners. We at this housing authority, I know we don't all the way agree with that because
No, we don't agree with that.
what happens is if people don't have the opportunity and the resources, of course they're not going to be homeowners. Right. So what we've been able to do is create opportunity. We've been able to add incentive to lifestyles through the home ownership, through family self-sufficiency, and be intentional about that. So I'm definitely excited about that. I'm super excited about the childcare program. You know, that could be a podcast all by itself because of what you and Drake and some of the folks at in leadership positions all across Huntsville have been able to do with that program is phenomenal. Giving women, young men, whoever wants an opportunity to become a child care provider, giving them an opportunity to go through this class and get this certification has been game changing. One of the things that we know that people talk about all the time is lack of child care. Well, if we can break down one of those barriers, then that gives a family an opportunity to go back to work. So just kind of briefly talk about where you are with that program. I know we just finished up cohort number 3, but that's been a great program as well. Let's talk about that before we try to wrap this thing up.
So really that program was birthed out of a conversation that we had getting ready for the strategic plan when we were talking about how to provide childcare for the residents. And I ended up I remember hearing about who Mazda Toyota were using, right? And then bringing Tutris to Huntsville. And so I got some friends at the chamber. I made a couple calls and we got a meeting with them. And they told us that they didn't even really have the providers in the area, right? And so with our restrictions, we were like, okay, and kind of just, you know, put it back on the back burner. But I just started looking for money. And while I was looking for money, I saw that childcare was one of those things. So I tried to make some changes to what we were thinking and then just started focusing on, okay, we're going to create childcare providers, right? And then we don't know where they're going to do the business at, but let's give them the tools, right? So I used to work at the Catalyst Center. So we're going to involve the Catalyst Center. CNI Solutions, we've been using them since we got our racial equity grant. So let's use them, and then try to create a system. And so when I applied for it, and we got it, they asked me to come to a meeting, and it was the people from the YMCA there too. And so I guess the people from the YMCA had wrote something similar. So what ended up happening was they gave us $50,000 and then $50,000, but we kind of had a full top to bottom structure done. So what ended up happening is we ended up kind of rolling them into what we had going on, and it just became a partnership with $100,000 to play with. And so within that, we've been able to give stipends, laptops, small business classes, and small business boot camp. Been able to provide some mentorship. We've had people go on to, become assistant directors of childcare facilities. We've had people go on to continue their education at Alabama A&M and Athens State. We've had people go from not even having a GED to working at the YMCA. And I just did a letter of recommendation for somebody going into the school system. We've had massive success for this program. We won a award of merit at Nero, a national award in Orlando. For this program. At this point, we got 30 graduates. We just got some new sponsorship money in it. And Drake State has been, nothing but great, because they have been a key partner on this. Me and Dr. Henderson ended up talking on the phone anytime, all times of the night, trying to figure this out. And I just can't say enough how much all the partners, whether it's the Chamber, the Catalyst Center, CNI Solutions, the Y, everybody has really wrapped their arms around this program, and it's become this kind of thing that everybody in the city talks about. I always hear about it. People like, man, I'm just trying to get in the next cohort. When you guys gonna do it again? And Drake, I think, might have found a way to make this a sustainable thing. So I think it's just an awesome framework, right? Because this, I feel like, can be duplicated anywhere where you got housing authorities. We got the people, right? We have the people, and if you put the right partnerships together, you can do a workforce development sufficiency program that just speaks volumes, right? Especially when you got the small business aspect, because yes, you could go work for somebody, but once you get the control of ownership, it's whatever you want to make it. We've had people with ideas out this world because they've lived it, right? People that have children have heart issues or whatever, and know that other parents have it and they can't go to work. So what does that look like? I want to start a business, and we might need some nurses, and we might need this, and we might need that, but it can make people that with children with special disabilities and deficiencies, well, now they could go to work. And the average person would never think about that, right? But some of these things take people that have had the lived experience. The Chamber is really on board because we need that. This is a growing city, it's busting at the seams. And that childcare aspect, especially 24 hours a day, because we have that manufacturing, is a need. Being able to kind of find a way to really touch that.
Yeah, man, it's a critical piece. It eliminates a barrier. And as we wrap this up, I got a couple of questions that I want to ask. As all the things that we've been able to do, things that you've gotten your hands on, what are some of the things that you think still need to be changed? Not just for this housing authority, but for housing authorities to be able to help people get to that next level.
I think that all housing authorities probably need that nonprofit aspect. I think when we were able to start the nonprofit, that's when it kind of opened up the flexibility for at least me to be able to, now I could design. Let me design a program that fits exactly what we need, right? What fits within the ecosystem of what we have going on, what is the partners or the people that we know, right? And that do business with us. And so we can kind of put all these things together and be able to go straight to it, right? And not have to deal with, there is a lot of federal regulation, and within housing authorities, you can only do certain things. And so for us to be able to to create programs that do not exist, that fit perfectly with what we have going on, using the partners that we have. I think that has been the key for the success here, because it just fits, because it's made for here. And yeah, it can be duplicated elsewhere, but it was created for what we had going on based on the friends that we have here that are willing to do business with us. And I think that direction for housing authorities in general is probably the thing that works.
Yeah, yeah. And let me ask you this, as you get out and you start doing community work like you're doing, do you see any laws that we feel like we need to challenge that can be changed to assist more people?
I mean, I have my own opinions on kind of like the new laws that are coming out. And I don't completely know how to answer that question, knowing that changes are coming, and I don't really know what those changes look like in practice. I know what they look like in paper, right? But I think I can't speak to any specifically. I just think that I think a lot of the stuff that we did here had to go with kind of not laws, but being able to change the social aspect, like changing minds, being able to create friends and strategic partnerships. I remember when I first came here, we had a conversation in front of resident services about what to do to be able to expand affordable housing here. And my number one thing was like, we need to create friends and partnerships to be able to have these conversations at different angles. It can't just be us, because then it makes it seem like it's just a us problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when banks are coming and they're asking about affordable housing, and the hospital is coming and asking about affordable housing, it makes it hard to deny that it's a need here. And that, people that are creating policy got to get on board. But I guess just being able to impact that social aspect and us to be able to create those partnerships. I'm not sure if it was laws per se, but here in the area that we're in, being able to kind of change minds and get people on board with the idea of not just low income housing, but those middle income people that have a little bit more issues receiving subsidy and public help. They need it too. Every time we've done something, it's broken the internet. We barely even promoted it, but people on the wait list shut the internet down because it's just that much of a need. And before we really start pushing it around, people were acting like it wasn't a need.
Right, right. And I tell you, man, it's been great talking to you, and I'm glad we were able to put this out there on a platform where now, as other people go and listen, they'll be able to see the impact that we're having in just one area of resident services. And I'm grateful for everything that you've been able to do to keep that momentum going in that department. I'm very near and dear to resident services. One, from being a resident, and then two, working in that department, understanding that relationships matter. Mm-hmm. They still matter. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that we brought away from COVID is that, our residents don't get touched as much as they should. And so the impact that we were able to have during a national shutdown was powerful, because that's all we were trying to do was help people. Mm-hmm. And getting back to the helping is what kind of turned some tables, because we're always in people's face and they saw us. They really knew that we were there to help. So definitely appreciate that. This has been great. I know we're going to have you back on the show. Any last words you want to share before we wrap up this episode? Anything you'd like to talk about?
Nah, I don't have anything extra, man. I just appreciate you having me on here. It was a great conversation. And it's always great to talk about the things that we've been able to do here. I think it's been impactful, high level, on a national level. I feel like this is probably one of the best housing authorities in the United States, and kind of one of those best kept secrets.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. We still got a lot of work to do. For those who don't know, Quinton is a part of our Choice Neighborhood Initiative team as well. Just a lot of things in the pipeline here at the Huntsville Housing Authority, and you all get a chance to see what we're about and what we do. So this has been great. Share it on all your social media platforms. Watch it over and over. You got questions, reach out to us through our website, call the office. You want to learn more about home ownership, childcare program, the auto loan program. These are just a few of the things that we have going on here at the Housing Authority. So we couldn't do it without great people. We have a great staff here, and Quinton's one of those individuals who is just moving the needle. That's what it's all about, moving the needle so that people can have access to things that they never thought that they would be able to have access to. And so again, this has been great. Share it on all your social media platforms, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Life in the Bricks podcast.
All right.
We've come to the end of the podcast today. Please share the link on all your social media platforms. We hope that you all will join us again next time. Until then, keep serving and keep pushing. This has been another amazing episode of Life in the Bricks podcast. Peace.